It's truly a race against time right now. We know that every day matters, every hour matters, if we want to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. But it's now or never, and I really want to keep fighting in that direction. I will certainly not give up. I'm extremely passionate about glaciology, and you know, it started quite a while ago. I was lucky to grow up in the French Alps, and since I was very young, I've always used all my spare time to hike around, go in the forest, build some huts, and I always tried to go higher up and higher up in the mountains. And I always wanted to see what was a little bit beyond the trees, beyond the next mountain. And when I was a teenager, I started mountaineering at a very low level, but this enabled me to access the high mountains, the high altitude environments. And from day one, I immediately fell in love with ice. I mean, I can't really explain it. I mean, it was really, really deep inside of me. It was ice or nothing. There was nothing that was of interest apart from this. And it's not only the beauty of these environments, but it's everything around it. You know, when you go on a glacier, you have to dress up a certain way. You have to wear all these, big, thick clothes. You have to put these big boots on your feet and crampons on your boots, the helmet, the ice axe. And to me, it really felt like like being an astronaut, kind of, and going on the moon every time I walked on these glaciers. And luckily, I had really good teachers throughout my studies that really pushed me to follow my passion, and who told me, okay, if you're so passionate about these environments, you can actually make it happen. And actually, the one person that materialized this possibility for me was a mountain guide. When I was 17, I met Hubert, who was a Swiss mountain guide about to retire in Switzerland. And he told me that he could see that I was really fascinated about these glaciers, and he told me that actually people are getting paid to study glaciers. And I thought, okay, this is all for me then. And after studying geography, geology, I finally ended up studying glaciology. And it's really when I started spending time in the field, more and more time in the field in the French Alps, that I realized, of course, that these glaciers were changing extremely rapidly. And not only I was really fascinated about the beauty of these environments, but they were also of global importance. And I really had this shift when I was maybe doing my bachelor's degree. And I understood that, hang on, actually this is beyond important. This is way beyond you as well, what is currently taking place. And I understood that glaciology is made of really passionate people. Glaciology is a very young science. But now the responsibilities we have are absolutely major. You know, as a scientist studying climate change, what we're facing is really distressing, is really alarming. I mean, no later than this morning, I was reading the latest news that said that actually parts of the Shackleton ice shelf collapsed in Antarctica only a few days ago because of a massive heat wave that hit the eastern part of the continent. And when you read this kind of news, you really have two options. You can either be depressed and decide to just give up, and the challenges we're facing are so big that sometimes we feel too small to be able to make a difference. Or you can use this kind of energy, this kind of rage that sometimes I feel when I read these news and study these environments to make a difference. And I think this is the decision we're facing now as a community. And when I see my colleagues, my friends studying these environments, together we all agree that we have to collectively have a positive impact. We have to make our science more accessible. We have to continuously fight to help people connect with what we study, to help people understand the magnitude of what is currently taking place. And I think most importantly, we have to empower people to act positively, to make a difference, to make a change. It originated maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. So it's been a long journey to bring it to life. But what happened is that back in 2015 or 2016, a seed was planted here. And I actually met a class of French kids visiting Svalbard, which doesn't happen very often. And at the time, I was finishing my PhD there. And the university tasked me to give a talk about what it's like to be a glaciologist at the time. And I thought, okay, let me get this done. I'm going to impress them as much as I can. So for about 45 minutes, I showed them videos of my work, taking helicopters, driving snowmobiles, going on icebreakers to do my research. And I was quite proud of myself at the end of the talk. I was like, they can see how cool it is to be a glaciologist today. And actually, one of the kids came to see me at the end of my talk. And he was maybe, 15, 16, 17 years old. And he said, but Heidi, okay, this was all in good, but what do you do in your daily life to help preserve these glaciers? What do you do every day to reduce your impact on the environment? What do you do to minimize your carbon footprint? And I can tell you that my jaw dropped. And I thought, wow, actually, I'm completely missing the point here. And this really helped me realize that, yes, I was studying these environments. Yes, I was trying to communicate as hard as I could about climate change. But when I looked at how I was conducting my research, there was really a big difference there. And it really didn't match. And so since that time, I thought, okay, there must be a way we can still conduct these research expeditions in the polar regions, but doing this differently. There must be a way to go to the Arctic or to go to Antarctica while trying to reduce your carbon footprint as much as possible. And so I started to talk to quite a few colleagues about this. How can we do research that is really meaningful while reducing your carbon footprint? And in Svalbard, because I really wanted to do it in Svalbard, the epicenter for climate change, there are not many different ways to reduce your carbon footprint. The transportation methods is the biggest point, and I had to go on skis. But I would have never tried to do this alone. I had to put a team together. And the team was put together very organically. It was just built by talking to a few people. And let me tell you that not everyone is keen to go on a month-long research expedition on skis, because it's super hard. It's very, very difficult. And you're going to face really harsh conditions. And so very naturally, some people started to embrace these ideas, not only of reducing our carbon footprint, but also of communicating as much as possible in making our research accessible to everyone. And so very naturally, the team started to increase from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 people. And this is how I ended up with this really magical team of super bright female scientists. And what was really important for me is really to make sure that I wouldn't take people who are clones of myself, because you really do not want this in the field. You want characters. You want people who have different skills. It's not necessarily polar skills, but it could be bringing a good mood in the team. It could be being able to fix things. And I think we were all pretty far away in terms of characters, but it worked so damn well in the field. And this is what we needed. We had someone who was always in a good mood, someone who was just bomb-proof when we faced these conditions, someone who could really read a route in the field no matter what, someone who was really good at organizing the food and the logistics. And this is what you want in the team. Diversity is always key. As a polar scientist, you are really facing extreme environments on a day-to-day basis. And you have to understand that these environments will always be stronger than you. And this is something that you very quickly understand when you start doing field work in the Arctic or in Antarctica, that the forces at play are so huge that if you don't respect these environments, you will not win, you will not survive there. Sadly, I have lost colleagues already in the polar regions because they tried their very best to be in the heart of these extreme environments, to study how quickly things were changing. And because these environments are changing so rapidly, they are also becoming more and more dangerous. So sadly, we are putting our lives on the line when we go to the polar regions and when we really want to get to the heart of the matter and understand how fast these environments are changing, but also how these changes will affect the rest of the world. And last year, I got the chance to lead a research expedition in Svalbard, which is this archipelago between northern Norway and the North Pole. That is very dear to my heart. I absolutely love Svalbard. To me, it's the most beautiful, the most magnificent place on Earth. Everything is made of ice and snow, everything is frozen, but it is also the epicenter for climate change. Today, it is the region on Earth that is changing the fastest. Like the Arctic is warming 2 to 3 times faster than the globe. But if you zoom in and look at Svalbard, Svalbard is warming 6 to 7 times faster than the rest of the world. So it's incredible what's happening there. It's really distressing because it's changing so rapidly. And what we try to do with my amazing team of scientists is to spend a month in Svalbard and to collect snow samples that would inform us on the drivers that are accelerating the melting of snow and ice. So we were studying how air pollution, all these tiny particles floating in the air, can land on snow and ice, making these surfaces darker and really catalyzing the melting of these surfaces. And we decided to do this expedition on skis, which is pretty old school, right? But it's also definitely not the easiest way of doing science in the polar regions, because you become extremely vulnerable to the environment when you're on skis. When you're on skis, you're camping, you have no shelter apart from your tent. And so this is why when the weather is bad or extremely bad, you're facing really, really stressful conditions. And we decided to do the expedition during the month of April last year. And April tends to be perfect weather. Usually it is sunny, cold, not really windy. There is a high pressure system that tends to stay over the archipelago. So we thought, perfect, let's do that. Everything was ready. And actually, we encountered historically bad conditions. But bad is maybe not powerful enough. I think it was horrifying conditions. And we were really not expecting this. But on day one, I noticed the temperatures were already quite high. It was supposed to be -10, -15. It was almost +5 degrees when we started the expedition. And I thought, okay, maybe it's just a blip and the conditions will go back to normal. And it just became increasingly worse and worse and worse. What we had for the first 2 weeks of the expedition was insane winds. We had winds up to 130, 140 kilometers per hour. We had really high temperatures, positive temperatures, so everything was melting, collapsing. We had avalanches, the crevasses over the glaciers were opening up. And there was a huge amount of snow being brought also by these warm air masses. So the environment became insanely dangerous for us. But we had to keep going. We had not only to survive, but on top of this, we had to continue our research protocol. And it became quite difficult for us. And we were not expecting this. But truly, I think what we faced was one of the first impacts of climate change there. What we were able to witness is what scientists had been saying for a very long time. My community had been saying that Svalbard, or the polar regions, would become more and more unpredictable, that the weather would be more and more extreme, that the winds would increase, that the temperatures would bring really wet air masses to these areas. And what we witness is exactly that. It is the expression of climate change over Svalbard. And luckily, because of the strength of the team and the fact that we were able to keep a cool head in these conditions, we were able to survive. But every day we face life or death situations. Every step we made, every decision we had to make was, how can we avoid dying today? How can we avoid an avalanche? How can we avoid crevasses there? How can we avoid sea ice that is about to collapse? And it shows that these polar regions are becoming actually more and more hostile because of climate change. And this should be extremely alarming. This should really, I'm trying to help people connect with these changes and show that if this is happening to the polar region, it can very well happen to us, wherever we are. Going on these expeditions is so much more than just traveling to these mesmerizing environments, to these beautiful, extreme, cold, rough, harsh environments. It probably teaches you more about yourself than about the environment itself. You know, it really keeps you very humble when you face these kind of situations. And you immediately have to understand that this place is stronger than you. And if you don't respect the environment, if you're not really attentive to the changes in the wind, the changes in the noise of your skis over the sea ice, the changes in the color of the snow, if you don't pay very close attention to this environment, you will lose. And luckily, my team fully comprehends this and really respects the environment. And so this is why we were able to avoid a lot of traps. But also, I think what this expedition has taught me about myself and about the team is that communication is key. But more than communication, I think compassion is key in these environments. Not only we have to respect the environment, we have to respect each other as well. And when you're cold, when you're terrified about the conditions, you have to tell your team about this. Never be afraid of expressing anxiety and being scared to the rest of the team, because if you start feeling something so negative, it's very likely the rest of the team is feeling the same way. But I've also learned, I think, to be able to stay, or try to stay, very calm and collected when you are facing the most stressful conditions possible. I mean, sometimes I remember one day we knew that a very strong storm was coming. And what I mean by strong storm, in Svalbard, it's typically quite high temperatures. So it's a blizzard, but quite a warm blizzard. We had winds up to 140 kilometers per hour that were coming our way. And we had nowhere to hide. We were really high up on the plateaus, on the mountains. And the environment is just ice, snow, and rock. And where do you shelter from this? And so collectively, we decided to simply bury ourselves in the ground. We had to dig holes as fast as we could to avoid the terrible conditions. And to us, you know, it felt normal to do this because we didn't have any other options. And again, it's the strength of the team really shines through here, because we all agreed, okay, we don't have any other options, we have to do that. And again, this is all that we did was in the name of science. It's not only because we wanted to survive, but because we wanted to continue this research program. And you can only make these decisions when you're able to really try to stay calm and collected and try to be mentally strong when this is happening. I think there's still such a long way to go in the way we're trying to make the science accessible, in trying to help connect the dots, in trying to help people connect with these alien and remote environments. I think what I'm happy about or proud of is that I was able to follow my passion. And this is quite a privilege today to be able to do that in the times we're living. I was able to make the decision of leaving academia after my postdoc at the University of St. Andrews, which was a very difficult choice. But I did that in order to have more freedom to communicate on these issues, because I wasn't satisfied with the kind of room I was given in academia to communicate on climate issues, which is strange. And luckily, over the past few years, things have really evolved in the right direction. I had this freedom of following my intuition and to pursue what was really driving me. And what is motivating me to wake up every day and to get to work is really to tell the whole world about these environments and to tell them that today we can still avoid the worst consequences of climate change. This is truly what's motivating me today. I feel quite happy that I've been able to speak to the right people at the right times, whether it's heads of states or parliamentarians or senators here and there. And I remember, for example, the reactions when we addressed members of the parliament in the UK. And I was not the only scientist speaking to them. We were a strong team of scientists. I was lucky to be surrounded by some of the brightest scientists in Europe and in the US. And we all had 5 minutes to talk about whether it was permafrost, ice sheets, glaciers. And I remember the reactions. We could see jaws dropping. This was really a reaction of shock and horror when we were exposing exactly what we were observing in the field. And we didn't try to be conservative. We were telling them the way things are right now. And you see those reactions and you're like, wow, okay, at least they're getting it now. They're understanding how urgent, how bad the situation is. But after that, what we would expect is actions. And those never came. And so I think that shift we need to operate between understanding the issue and then starting to make decisions, there's still a big gap there. We need to bridge this gap as quickly as possible. The reactions are very strong, and these people have the power to change things. But why aren't they making the right decisions? So we need to work with them. We need to continue working with them about making the right decisions, making the right assessments, and of course making urgent decisions that are as inclusive as possible. Because today, fighting climate change is helping each and every one of us. If we continue following this journey of inaction, unfortunately, it's the most vulnerable people who are going to be the most affected by these changes. And in the polar regions, we always try to tell decision makers about what's happening. But I think that all in all, beyond the VIPs or these kind of important people, we need to tell the general public, the normal people about what's happening. And I think today I'm really proud that I've been able to connect with a lot of local projects in France, with kids, with schools everywhere, and try to work with them on climate action, to try to get rid of this climate anxiety, to focus on okay, what can we do? What can I do at my level to change things? And I think this is the direction we must take. We need to educate in order to empower people to make a change. And I'm still trying, and I will absolutely not give up. There's still such a long way to go, but I'm proud of the journey I've taken so far. But I know what it will take in the future to continue this. And it will take a lot of time, a lot of energy. We don't have time, but we certainly have a lot of energy. So I'll continue doing that. I love social media because, again, we have to use all the tools available. I think scientists should be on TikTok. Scientists should be on Snapchat. They should be on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook. We should try to dominate the space. And what I love about these social networks is that, yes, you can talk about numbers, but what will make a difference is really your experiences from the field. People want to know what it's like to be there, what you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel when you're standing on an ice shelf in Antarctica. People really want to understand what goes on behind the scenes. I mean, the questions I get on social media are so funny because people want to know how you can sleep in these environments, how you brush your teeth, how you can eat and go to the bathroom, for example. And this is also about building trust in the science. It's about making it relatable. It's about showing that we're just human beings trying to make a difference. And so I love using Twitter, I love using Instagram. I've just started TikTok, but I feel so behind. But I think it's crucial that the scientists, especially the younger generation of scientists, tries to be there and tries to be engaging and answering questions from school kids, from parents or grandparents who are also on these social networks. I love this, and I think it is our duty. As our research is being paid by taxpayers' money, it's only fair that we make it as accessible as possible. Every chance I have to talk about glaciers and climate change is a great opportunity. And you know, in France, we're facing presidential elections next month. And I'm really trying to help people connect the fact that the person we're going to elect collectively will of course be in power for the next 5 years in France. And the next 5 years will actually decide on what will happen to Earth for the next centuries. So we really have to empower people and telling them why voting is so crucial, for example. If you vote for a person who understands the science, who knows that they have the power to change things for the better, we should vote for that person. But it's absolutely now or never. So again, it's all about connecting the dots and educating the masses on these issues. If we lose another 5 years, we will go beyond certain temperature thresholds. Of course, it's not just France, but we matter. And we might go over certain temperature thresholds that will trigger irreversible consequences of climate change. So it's the next few years are just so very important. To most of us, Shackleton is by far our biggest role model. And we often talk about Shackleton in the field. It's strange because it's been more than 100 years since we lost him, but we often go back to his leadership, I think, to the skills, to the kind of schemes he's been able to use to build a team and bring people together and make a difference against all odds. And I think, to me, the most valuable skills to work in these polar environments are certainly passion and to never lose this sense of wonder for the environment. And Shackleton was like this, even though the ship was getting crushed by the ice, and still being able to dissociate yourself from all that negativity and sometimes take a few seconds to say, wow, but look at where I am actually. These environments are crazy. And I try to do that. It's not easy, but when you're in this insane blizzard and your tent is like a washing machine for days sometimes, and you do not see any ends of this, and you have to remember where you are. I mean, you are in a place where nature dominates everything, and the wind is mesmerizing, the snow is beautiful, the light is always incredible in those places. So having this skill of keeping this sense of wonder, of being extremely passionate about these environments is very important. But of course, you need to be determined, and I think determination is such a big one. You need to know where you want to be going. You need to know why you're doing this. Because if you don't have a very well-defined goal, then you give up. If you don't know what the goal is, it's very hard to find a route to get there. And so for me, being determined and being able to bring your team together is extremely valuable. And the last skill, I think, to me that is very important is also empathy and compassion. Being compassionate is key if you want to work with a team. We're all cold. I mean, we're all suffering in these environments. Let's face it. I remember one of my supervisors used to say on day one, every expedition used to say, I'm the biggest chicken out here, okay? I'm always cold, I always want to go to the bathroom, so we're all on the same level here. Let's just admit it, okay? And being able to respect each other's emotions and feelings is so important if you want to succeed. So these 3 skills for me are key. I'll have to pause for a second. I think, to me, my biggest goal is to help people connect with these really remote environments, and to understand that what we do here, wherever we are, can have an impact on these environments, and in turn that these changing environments have a direct impact on our day-to-day lives. This is really what I try to do on a daily basis. Help be this kind of connection between people and these remote environments. But on top of this, I think deep inside I'm really trying to empower people to make a difference. Today, we have to help people understand that we shouldn't wait for a technology that doesn't exist that's going to help us to solve the climate crisis. We shouldn't accept that one person can make a decision on our behalf and that will dictate the next 5 years of our lives. We should really understand that it's by making collective actions and collective decisions that we can fight this big challenge. And if I can do this, if I can also plant a little seed here and show people that we can still slow down what's happening, we can still avoid the worst consequences of climate change, that we can do this, but that it's now or never, then I think I'll be satisfied.